These are the 10 cheapest places to buy land in the United Kingdom right now, and several of them will genuinely shock you. We're talking about land that costs less per acre than a used car, land priced 92% below what buyers pay in the south of England, and land that might not stay this cheap for much longer thanks to billions of pounds in new investment flowing into these regions. £8,200. That's what an average acre of farmland costs across Great Britain according to the Savills Farmland Value Survey from the first half of 2025. In the places we're about to cover, an acre sells for as little as £1,000, and no, that is not a typo. The UK land market sits at a genuine crossroads right now. Farmland values climbed 27% between 2020 and 2024 after years of steady growth, and then 2025 brought the first price decline since 2017, and which makes it one of the UK's most reliable long-term asset classes. Cheap land absolutely exists, and the real question is whether you know what to do with it once you own it. If you subscribe to the channel, let's get into the list. Number 10. Yorkshire Dales Fringes and the East Riding. Yorkshire kicks off the list at number 10, and specifically we're looking at the upland fringes of the Dales and peripheral areas of the East Riding. The county-wide average sits around £9,130 per acre, which doesn't sound cheap at first glance. That average hides enormous variation across the region though. Up on the high moorland and rough grazing country of the Dales Fringes, prices drop to between £5,000 and £6,000 per acre, roughly 30 to 40% below the national average. North Yorkshire contributed more farmland to the market than anywhere else in northern England, with Savills recording 5,512 acres listed in 2025. This isn't some theoretical market where nothing trades. Land changes hands here regularly. National park designations present the catch, and there's always a catch with cheap land. Buying inside the Yorkshire Dales National Park boundary leaves you with slim chances of gaining planning permission for anything meaningful. The affordable acreage sits in peripheral upland zones outside those protected boundaries. Building plots here run £60,000 to £120,000, which sounds reasonable until you consider the staggering gap between bare agricultural land and a plot with planning permission. That gap might be the single most revealing number in UK property, and we'll come back to it later. Number 9. County Durham and Teesdale. County Durham and the Pennine Uplands of Teesdale come in at number 9. Upland grazing and pasture here trades between £5,000 and £7,000 per acre, which is respectable enough. The building plot prices tell the real story though. Plots in places like Middlestone Moor near Spennymoor have appeared on the market at £40,000 to £75,000, among the cheapest in all of England. A comparable building plot in the southeast would easily cost you £500,000 or more. Savills reported that their poorer pasture index for England slipped 1.4% in the first half of 2025, bringing that average to £6,100 per acre, and County Durham tracked that broader Northern England trend. Limited transaction volumes make precise year-on-year comparisons difficult here. What keeps prices persistently low is a trio of factors: harsh Pennine weather, few diversification opportunities, and real distance from major employment centers. On the upside, land outside of AONB and national park designations offers better prospects for planning permission than many other cheap areas on this list, and that distinction matters enormously when you're trying to actually do something with the land you've bought. Number 8. Northumberland and the Cheviot Hills. Beautiful, wild, and remote, the upland areas around the Cheviot Hills in Northumberland come in at number 8. Grazing here ranges from £5,000 to £6,000 per acre, with lowland areas commanding considerably more. Building plots across Northumberland and County Durham rank among England's cheapest at £40,000 to £80,000 per plot, according to Home Building and Renovating magazine. Savills tracked 3,693 acres marketed in Northumberland through 2025, which points to reasonable supply. What sets this market apart is who's actually buying. Unlike areas closer to London where investors, lifestyle buyers, and natural capital funds bid prices up, Northumberland remains dominated by neighboring farmers looking to expand, and that limited investor competition helps keep a lid on values. Here's what could shift things though. The Northeast Combined Authority formed in May 2024 and now commands a £1.1 billion housing allocation. Nearby Sunderland has attracted £1.12 billion in direct investment from Nissan. The Transpennine Route Upgrade, a £3.5 billion project, will reshape east-west rail connectivity across the region. None of this directly targets Northumberland's uplands, but economic ripple effects from spending at that scale rarely stay contained. Number 7. Cumbria, Lake District Fringes, and the Eden Valley Uplands. Precision matters at number 7 because when most people hear Cumbria, they picture the Lake District, and the Lake District National Park enforces some of the tightest planning restrictions in England. The cheap land we're talking about sits outside the park boundary, out in the Pennine Uplands. Upland grazing starts at approximately £5,000 per acre there, and the county average lands around £7,700. Building plots range from £50,000 to £100,000, and Savills recorded 3,927 acres marketed in Cumbria through 2025. Northern England's farmland market tells a split story that works in a bargain hunter's favor. Overall values dipped 0.5% in 2024, but prime northern arable actually rose 3.2% in 2025 to hit £11,600 per acre. Upland pasture values moved in the opposite direction, softening while the best land grew more expensive. That divergence means the marginal land, the stuff that's already affordable, keeps getting slightly cheaper. Everything in Cumbria revolves around those national park lines on the map. Step outside the boundary into the Pennine Uplands, and you enter a different regulatory world with more flexibility. Step inside, and even minor development proposals face intense scrutiny. Number 6. Mid and West Wales. Crossing the border into Wales is where things start getting genuinely interesting. Powys, Ceredigion, and Carmarthenshire offer agricultural land at £5,000 to £8,000 per acre, with upland grazing toward the bottom of that range and rural building plots running £40,000 to £80,000. Welsh average values fell 2% in 2024 according to the Savills Spotlight report from January 2025, then flatlined through the first half of 2025, while marketed acreage rose 9%. More sellers than buyers is exactly the market condition that favors people hunting for bargains. Scale here dwarfs what you'd find in southern England. The 3,784-acre Nanow estate in Gwynedd appeared as a single listing in 2025, nearly 4,000 acres in one go. Wales operates under an entirely different legal framework from England though, and buyers who don't understand this will get burned. The Planning Wales Act 2015 and its own Planning Policy Wales framework govern development. Land transaction tax replaces stamp duty with different rate bands. Most critically, Wales lacks England's expanded permitted development rights, which means there's no equivalent to Class Q barn conversions. A derelict agricultural building in Wales cannot be flipped to residential use through the streamlined English route, and that kills one of the main strategies for adding value to cheap farmland. New dwelling use classes now separate main residences from second homes occupied 183 days or fewer and short-term holiday lets, giving Welsh councils power to restrict purchases in Welsh-speaking heartlands. Anyone buying from overseas or as a second home needs to check local designations before committing. Policy uncertainty around the Welsh Sustainable Farming Scheme has rattled confidence too. Delayed until the 1st of January 2026, the scheme demands 10% tree cover on all participating farms, a requirement that's upset farmers and clouded the future economics of Welsh hill farming. The investment pipeline offers a counterweight though. Over £110 million from the UK and Welsh governments flows through the Mid-Wales Growth Deal, expected to unlock over £400 million in total investment and up to 1,400 jobs. Local area energy plans have identified a £559 million grid infrastructure need. Delivery on even a fraction of that would reshape the economic map of Mid-Wales. Number 5. Central Scotland, Upland, and Peripheral areas. Number 5 takes us into central Scotland, but not the expensive agricultural hinterland around Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're looking at the upland periphery, the higher ground, the marginal farming country that rings the central belt. £4,500 per acre buys upland pasture here, while arable in the central lowlands reaches £8,000. Building plots run £60,000 to £120,000. Values ticked up modestly in 2024 before stabilizing through 2025. Around 5,600 acres came to market in central Scotland in 2024, 24% above the 5-year average, which represents serious supply. Almost all of the affordable land sits in the peripheral upland fringe, and confusing that with lowland arable, which costs considerably more, would be an expensive mistake. Scotland's legal framework deserves close attention from anyone watching outside the UK because it operates nothing like England and Wales. The Land Reform Act of 2003 created a statutory public right of responsible access across most land, the famous right to roam. Walkers, cyclists, and wild campers can cross your property and you cannot stop them. 4 separate community rights to buy now exist in Scotland on top of that. Communities can register interest in land and gain first refusal when the owner sells, and crofting communities can compulsorily acquire croft land even without a willing seller. Compulsory purchase by a community rather than the government is an extraordinary power by English standards. The newly passed Land Reform Scotland Act of 2025 pushes things even further. Holdings exceeding 1,000 hectares now require land management plans and prior notification of sales, and ministers gain the authority to break up large land holdings at point of sale when they decide it serves the public interest. A new Land and Communities Commissioner can investigate and issue fines reaching £40,000. Leading solicitor Don MacLeod of Tyrconnell described parts of the new law as, quote, junk law, which tells you how the landowning establishment received these changes. Number 4. West Scotland, Argyll and Bute, Stirlingshire Uplands. Spectacular mountain and loch country defines number 4, where Argyll and Bute and the Stirlingshire Uplands offer pasture at roughly £3,500 per acre and arable at around £5,000. Rural building plots sell between £40,000 and £80,000. Prices held steady through 2025, and approximately 3,600 acres came to market in 2024, which was actually above the 5-year average. Demand stays muted in the remotest patches though, where limited diversification options keep buyers cautious. Hill livestock, lowland pasture, mixed farming, and some dairy make up the available land types. Every Scottish legal consideration we just covered applies equally here: the right to roam, community purchase rights, and the new large landholding restrictions. West Scotland adds a practical challenge on top of the legal ones. Running electricity, water, and drainage to a remote site can cost £15,000 to £40,000 or more, assuming you even hold the legal rights to route services across a neighbor's property. That infrastructure cost is a recurring theme across every cheap area on this list. Land sells at a discount precisely because it's isolated, and isolation carries real expenses that can swallow the apparent bargain. Number 3. Dumfries and Galloway. Pasture in Dumfries and Galloway averages approximately £3,750 per acre. Arable sites around 5,000, and building plots range from 40 to 90,000. Values showed no meaningful movement in 2025 compared to the previous year. Dairy farming anchors this region's agricultural economy, and around 5,300 acres changed hands in 2024, reflecting genuine market liquidity. Forestry investors returned in 2024 and 2025, but at lower price levels than the peaks of 2022 and 2023. That cooling matters because the recent forestry boom drove Scottish land prices well above agricultural value in some areas, and the pullback means more realistic pricing for buyers interested in the land itself rather than carbon offset speculation. Public investment adds weight to the opportunity here. The Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal commits over £450 million in cross-border spending between southern Scotland and northern England. The Chapelcross Green Energy Hub on a former nuclear site is being developed as a clean growth strategic investment location, and Scottish Borders towns just to the south are receiving £7.2 million directly. Cheap land, active market turnover, and genuine government-backed investment flowing into the region create a combination worth paying attention to. Number 2. The Scottish Borders, Upland areas. Upland pasture across the Scottish Borders averages around £3,500 per acre, with arable in lower-lying valleys reaching £7,000. Building plots cost between £50,000 and £100,000. Values held broadly constant in the first half of 2025 according to Savills, while supply in the Borders dropped below its 5-year average. Less supply meeting steady demand means prices will likely hold or edge upward. What makes the Borders stand out beyond raw price is the arrival of carbon credit investors who see these uplands differently than traditional farmers do. That investor interest reflects a deeper shift in what land is actually used for. Historically, land value tracked agricultural productivity, better soil and climate meant higher prices. Carbon credits, biodiversity net gain payments, and renewable energy leasing have created entirely new income streams that don't depend on what grows in the ground at all. Low productivity upland, the land that has always traded cheapest, turns out to be exactly what these new markets want. Which brings us to something that could rewire the economics of cheap land across the entire UK. Biodiversity net gain became mandatory for all new developments in England starting February 2024, requiring developers to deliver a 10% biodiversity uplift. Off-site B and G credits trade at £15,000 to £25,000 per unit, and the government deliberately priced its own statutory credits at a punitive £48,000 per unit to push developers toward the private market. Cheap, unproductive agricultural land turns out to be ideal for delivering BNG, with 30-year habitat management commitments generating up to £20,000 per biodiversity unit. Annual market value sits between £135 and £274 million. That entire revenue stream didn't exist 2 years ago. Renewable energy adds another layer. Onshore wind landowners can expect approximately £40,000 per year from a single 3-megawatt turbine. Exposed, elevated, windy upland, exactly the kind of land that costs the least on our list, is exactly what energy developers compete for. Number 1. The Scottish Highlands and Islands. Number 1 couldn't be anything else. The Scottish Highlands and Islands hold the cheapest land in the entire United Kingdom, £1,000 per acre. That's what remote hill ground sells for here. Upland planting land sits between 3,000 and 3,500, average pasture runs around 2,500, and arable, where it exists at all, reaches roughly 3,500. At 1,000 per acre, Highland hill ground costs 92% less than prime arable in southeast England, where prices range from 12 to 18,000. That's not a modest discount, it's a fundamentally different market on the same island. Building plots in remote highland locations start from £25,000 to £60,000 with planning permission. Hill ground prices actually fell in 2024, dropping approximately £500 per acre from 2023 levels before flattening through 2025. The reasons for this pricing are straightforward: remoteness, difficult access, harsh climate, extremely low agricultural productivity, expensive infrastructure connections, and population density among the lowest in Western Europe. These same factors make the Highlands stunningly beautiful and commercially challenging in equal measure. And then there's the Inverness and Cromarty Firth Green Freeport, the strongest investment catalyst attached to any affordable land area on this entire list. £25 million in UK government seed funding backs it. Projections call for 11,300 jobs over 25 years and £2.6 billion in inward investment. Sumitomo has already committed $350 million for a subsea cable factory at Nig. Ardersier Port, the UK's largest brownfield port covering 450 acres, is drawing down a £100 million credit facility. Across the wider region, Highland Council holds over £11.1 billion in long-term investment commitments, an extraordinary figure for an area with just over 200,000 residents. The cheapest place to buy land in the UK also carries what might be the most dramatic investment pipeline of any region on the list. Whether that pipeline delivers at full capacity is a separate and serious question, which is exactly what we need to talk about next. Significant results. So, what does all of this add up to? Cheap land exists and you can buy it today. Acres in the Scottish Highlands sell for the price of a second-hand laptop. Pasture in mid-Wales costs less than a holiday. Building plots in County Durham go for what you'd pay for a parking space in central London. Cheap land and usable land are two very different things though. That 50 times price multiplier between agricultural land and land with planning permission overshadows everything else. Knowing planning law, checking for ransom strips and restrictive covenants, and steering clear of the land banking scams that have burned investors out of £200 million, those are what separate a smart purchase from a very expensive education. The UK land market is being reshaped right now. Brand new revenue from biodiversity credits, carbon offsetting, and renewable energy leasing is rewriting the economics of marginal land. Billions in investment flow toward the cheapest regions through free ports and growth deals. The tractor tax saga permanently altered farmland's status as a tax shelter, which may push more supply onto the market at lower prices. For patient, informed, and careful buyers, there has rarely been a more compelling time to look at affordable land in the United Kingdom.